Welcome to the Collegium, our monthly magazine program in 3 parts: cinema, state of affairs, and our arts calendar. For our Cinema 1 portion of the program, a selection from the 27th Black International Cinema Berlin 2012, Swimming Lesson, from the directors Shahari Moore and Christine List from the United States of America. We then proceed to our state of affairs with a conversation with Ursula Troche, our guest from the United Kingdom, and Gregor from the Free Mumia Coalition. Moving right along is Cinema 2, A Good Family. Director Amir Hossein Torabi from Iran, also a selection from the 27th Black International Cinema Berlin 2012. Last but not least, our arts calendar. Spoken Word, an Odyssey musical suite from the composer Kevin Hunter. Again, our guests, Ursula Troche and Gregor. So in addition to staying cool, remember you are participating in what else but the Collegium.
Searches for a fresh vein, another runaway, the vague dreams of the runway. As her umbrella collapses, she cries, or is it laughter? Because they feel the same. She's my hello girl. Someone who doesn't love the world. She's my hero girl. How can I love someone who doesn't love the world? She swears she'll change her ways and drift to LA. She heard they don't need seasons there. Like a splinter, yeah, it's a razor blade. She's a heroin girl. How can I love someone who doesn't love the world? She's a heroin girl.
Hello and welcome to our State of Affairs portion of the program, where we're very pleased to share this evening with Ursula Troche.
Thank you.
Who is visiting us from the UK, and Gregor, whom we had the pleasure to speak with a month ago, and he's been kind enough to come back and join us again. So let us begin with, as Mother said, ladies first. Tell us about your background and what it is you're doing in the UK.
Yeah, thanks very much, first of all, for inviting me. My background is, well, I'm from Germany originally, but I've come to live in London in 1991. So I kind of lived all my adult life in London. And so I kind of have sort of spent more time in London now than in Germany. But it's kind of, it's an interesting experience in terms of finding out my particular identity as an other, as some kind of other person, which is not like somebody who wouldn't think about the other. So you kind of get into this sort of post-colonial space, even though I'm not a typical post-colonial, but my experience somehow made me somehow to be closer to be interested in that whole race issue and boundaries, barriers, black and white, and what else is there, and so on. So lots of my work now has to do with sort of doing dialoguing with different communities and so on.
And your writing, what about that?
My writing has resulted has really resulted from my situation, because well, there's two things. I studied African studies and politics as well when two years after I came to London. So I had that sort of interest as well, anyway. And apart from that, I kind of realized that due to the experience I had of being asked, oh, where are you from? When are you going back? Do you like England? And so on, that I kind of had this experience of sort of exclusion. And then on a different level with my African studies, I sort of saw myself in the resistance vis-a-vis the sort of colonial teachings that you can get at the university and so on. So when I finished my degree, I had this sort of empty space. I no longer had sort of writing to do in terms of my essays for university as a resistance. So all of my experience at university and my experience in everyday life on the street merged. Therefore, the whole race issue and my own sort of issue merged, and that made me write to become a performance poet.
Gregor, when you hear the things that she's describing, how do those experiences fit into the work that you're doing, and some of the things that you've talked to us about Mumia, and also interested to hear about the time that you spent with Mumia in the United States?
So 3 questions in one, basically.
Keep you on a roll.
Yeah, can very well imagine living in London, where history hits you on most corners of the city. Yeah, that it's very easy to see colonial influence and post-colonial social structures, because it's everyday life in London. I can sympathize with your experience being born into basically privileged white society here in Europe. It's sometimes a bit difficult to see post-colonial experiences and social structures within one's own society. But I found when I moved to London, and not being with my experience from Germany, when I moved there, I could very well or very easily recognize the colonial history and the colonial presence. Although I must say that compared to Germany, some programs in London struck me quite positively about empowerment and all that sort of politics which haven't even touched German discussion yet. But on the other hand, also hear from British or friends from other countries within Europe when they come here that it's far more easier for them to recognize racist structures within the German society. Because, yeah, as I said, if you're born here and from a privileged perspective, it's always some work involved to find out about it because you don't experience this in your daily life. Your other question was regarding Mumia Abu Jamal. I did visit him in 2010. At that time, he was still on death row in the SCI Green in Pennsylvania, which is, the SCI Green is close to a town called Waynesburg, tiny town. Half of its population is basically working in or for the prison. The other half is comprised of relatives of long-term prisoners who moved there once they reach retirement to be close to the family members and loved ones. Because many, many prisoners spend most of their life in these prisons, as we talked about in the last show. The SCI Green is not just a death row, it's a big prison with 1,500 prisoners where they produce orange jumpsuits, which are worn by many prisoners around the US. And yeah, well, entering death row is like a super maximum prison. You go through a lot of checkups, you walk through hallways with iron doors, which are open and closed automatically right in front of you. The closer or more you get inside the prison, the colder it gets, as well from the temperature as from the atmosphere. And the three of us who visited Mumia at that time found eventually a small booth, almost the size of this table, where we had to fit in all three of us physically. And there was a window glass, security of strong glass, little holes on the outside, so there was no amplified speech device, but just a few holes. And you had to concentrate very hard to listen to whom was talking on the other side. That was Mumia Abu Jamal, the same size booth, just him on his own. Difference was we had a door handle on our side, he didn't. He had a steel door there. And yeah, within a couple of minutes, basically, he made us feel very welcome, almost like as if he hosted a visit in his home. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't obviously a cozy home, but a very white and steel-styled atmosphere around you. I mean, white, the color of the ceiling, and everything was white. There are no colors in there. And it was very loud because many prisoners had visiting time at that period, and they are usually cuffed with chains. And whenever they see, there's a little window on the door on the back, and whenever they see a friend, they knock with their shackles onto the steel door to make it swing and to make it move a bit. And this is basically the only physical contact people have in isolation on death row, and they shout very loud to get through the door. And this happened, I'd say, the first half hour of our visit every minute. So it was very loud, and it's basically how prisoners in isolation make contact and exchange little messages and say hello to each other, and obviously delighted to see each other again after a long time, because he told us about this daily routines on death row, and probably we haven't got enough time in this show to talk about it, but it's isolation 23 hours a day. It's 1 hour a day on the yard in a little cage, 3 by 4 meters, with one other prisoner, and that's it, except for the visiting times. And we had an impressive and amazing conversation, almost 5 hours we had there to spend with him. Obviously, we talked about politics from one coast to the other and then around the world. He was very interested in developments once in Africa, especially in South Africa, and he was also very interested in developments in Eastern Europe after the so-called unification of, for instance, East Germany, and developments regarding economy, employment, racism. And I was astonished how much he was informed, how much he knew about daily politics in Europe. Yeah. It was amazing, and I asked him a couple of questions there, how he got his information, which was interesting because as a journalist, he hasn't got the access to information like usual journalists have, although he's one of the most published journalists of the US. And he's basically got a huge network of people from all over the world who constantly write him and exchange, and he keeps sending back questions and stuff. And this is why, for instance, in the US, he discovers social developments a couple of years ahead before general media picks up on it. The housing bubble, he predicted 3 years before it was actually subject in the media, because he said many people wrote to him because they were evicted. Single mothers with 4 kids being evicted on their boxes sitting on the road after the bailiffs left and nailed shut the house. They think like, oh, I'm gonna write the voice of the voiceless. Maybe he can help me, which sounds amazing from his perspective, being an isolated prisoner on death row, but kind of this is how he works. And
why, in your opinion, is there so much support and interest in this man's situation?
Because he can voice, or can give voice to basic problems which trouble loads of people. I mean, I'd say he probably is aware of, even though he's been in prison for the last 30 years, he must be very aware of the living situation for probably 1/3 of the US population, which is basically closed out of the participation. Yeah, they have got no chances to get decent jobs, get decent housing, get a proper education, because everything which is privatized means you need money to be able to take part. And if you are excluded, it's kind of difficult. And he's been always, not just since he's in prison before, he made a reputation as a journalist because he picked up on some subjects and went into deep research about it to find out what is at the heart of it. And I think this is the respect he receives from parts of the US society. This is also the hate he receives by some other parts of the US society. And this is the interest many people who work, for instance, against racism, against the death penalty, against prison industry, but on all sorts of issues within society, like the role the military plays and the industry behind it plays. Yeah? You won't get around Mumia Abu-Jamal because he has published on loads of these issues for the last 30 years on a constant basis.
When you hear this, where is the relationship between what he's describing and what to some extent is happening in your hometown?
Well, it's very complex, because in a way, the work I do is very different, because if the whole sort of liberation struggle, or black liberation struggle, which is a human liberation struggle, because we all depend on one another. So if we see that as a whole, then we're in very different parts of that. I'm sort of that identity expression movement, whereas Gregor, obviously, you are supporting the most punished.
But what I'm after is your observations of the society in which you live.
Okay.
And what is the relationship between your observations of the society, particularly the UK just had some interesting uprisings not very long ago.
Yes.
So what is the relationship between what he's describing and your observations of where you live?
Well, there are similarities, obviously. That whole system of racism and all the structures around it coming from colonialism and slavery and so on are very similar. And in the US, obviously, slavery was in the country itself, whereas in Britain, it didn't happen in the same country, it happened outside, and then this is where you ship back and forth. Whereas obviously in America, everything happened on that spot. But at the same time, the similarities are great. I mean, people are suffering from very similar issues. The prison population is, the black prison population in England is disproportionately high. There's more black men in prison than there are at university, which is outrageous. So it's such a situation that also makes the Free Mumia campaign very, very necessary, because it's just the tip of the iceberg, because so many people are sort of, in some sense, in the same boat. So yes, I can see.
It's sort of a metaphor for what's happening in many places in the world.
Yeah.
Gregor, which way is up? Richard Pryor, how in the world are we going to address these very complex situations that we find ourselves in?
We need to organize, and we need to get a foot in all these developments. Yeah? I mean, just a couple of hours ago I heard that one of the most, most decorated politician in Germany was up for privatization of prisons, and all that sort of thing is might become the new head of this planning committee for this airport here in Berlin, which is a local scandal in its own right. And
maybe you should tell our public, especially overseas, what is the situation with the airport? What is happening?
It's just a big project which completely failed, and they messed up the books, and now everyone tries to put the blame on each other. Basically, loads of taxpayers' money went down the drain into some pockets which would probably never be told about. The new head, who is supposed to be the new head, is a very law and order politician who is for years trying to copy the American model of free strikes and you're out, of denying people the right to proper trial by saying, oh, we can have plea bargains instead and stuff like this. And this guy is supposed to head one of the biggest airport projects of this country, which has, interestingly, this second only in existence in the whole of Europe, a prison for migrants. Yeah? So a specific European thing might be different, definitely different in the US, but refugees who come to Europe have got the right, once they touch the ground, to ask for political asylum everywhere in Europe. But if they technically don't touch the ground because they're still in an international airport, they can't exercise this right. Therefore, these guys in Berlin came up with the idea, they built a special prison on the international area of this airport to sort out their racist agenda on another level. I mean, could tell you much more about it, but it's probably not the time. And this man is to become the head of this department. I'm not surprised about it, looking back at his past. But I think we need to raise public awareness about it. We need to organize, and we need to stop such projects from happening. Literally to stop that they build private prisons where they put in people from, usually youth from part of the society which hasn't got a choice, which hasn't got ability to participate. Yeah, we need to stop that, and we need to organize over all the different communities and speak out with one voice.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us here on the Collegium. And now we will proceed to our arts calendar, film and arts calendar. So stay with us, and remember, you are participating in what else but the Collegium.
Footprints in the sand, an exploration, excavation. How does the ground look like on which we walk? What is the composition of the ground on which we stand? How many people have walked there before us? And do we know, can we see footprints, imprints, inscriptions? And do they remain in sand or stone? How do we get to know what those before us did for us? Of all those who contributed to life, who do we recognize? Footprints, imprints on the ground, footprints in the sand, stories inscribed in the landscape only until the coming of another wave, whose footprints are remembered, whose prints are washed away, whose patterns are made visible by remembering, honoring footprints as evidence of activity, of journeys and of existence, like contributions written on the pavement. Yes, for how long will those footprints remain? For all to be seen until the next wave might bury these prints like an illusion, as if these prints never existed, as if these feet hadn't walked there. Like history being washed away, like African origins being forgotten. And so these footprints become at best part of the underground, parts of the anatomy, archaeology of knowledge. But then again, their memory is not certain. Their existence may be denied for lack of evidence. In order to defy this danger of denial of those faded footprints, they need to be fossilized. Their stories need to be visibilized. Their presence remembered before layers of new sand bury what's underneath and fail to notice the texture of the ground that they walk on. This is what Fountainhead Tanz Theater does. Fountainhead features footprints for us to be able to see, notice, recognize and remember what may be buried in the sea. The people who made up the nature of the sea and the land and theirs and our culture by ours and their life and legacy, by assuming responsibility and making sacrifices necessary to look at lost history and turn it into found history, narrated story from continuity and presence. Footprints unearthed, like faces emerged from the shadows. Evidence of activity excavated, the story of existence expanded, the silence of empty spaces exchanged with information, for us to learn and to reach beyond our dimension. Footprints in the sand, no, footprints that now stand on solid ground. Footprints enlightened by Fountainhead. Let it be known, let it be said, there are voices talking, and they are to be heard. There have been feet walking, and they are screened and written down in print.
Since I'm not a poet, I decided to read a few sentences by another author, Mumia Abu-Jamal, which I talked about earlier from his book We Want Freedom. And he's referring to black liberation struggles in the time of the American Revolution. Consider that these rebellions occurred a few decades before the Declaration of Independence and the subsequent American Revolution. In those battles for liberty, it is perhaps unremarkable to note that some 5,000 blacks were eventually integrated into the army of the Continental Congress, although General George Washington, a slaveholder from Virginia, initially opposed their enlistment. The 1st Rhode Island Regiment, an elite regiment of black enlisted men and white officers, carried the day against the British at Yorktown, playing a pivotal role in forcing the surrender of Cornwallis. What is less known is that well over 10 times that number, some 65,000 Africans, joined the British cause. They joined not because of any craven loyalty to the crown, nor any disloyalty to the colonies, but rather because of the age-old impetus of self-interest. Britain's Lord Dunmore offered freedom to all so-called Negroes who would fight for the crown, and tens of thousands leapt at the opportunity. Dunmore organized a corps of black former slaves into the Ethiopia Regiment, who wore the motto, "Liberty to slaves," on their tunics. This regiment helped the British capture and torture Norfolk, Virginia, on New Year's Day 1776. When the British were forced to withdraw in 1783, over 20,000 Africans fled the United States. Having fought for the losing side of the revolution, they had no desire to remain in the Slavocratic states. They may have lost the war, but they did not lose all. Many lived lives of freedom that their former countrymen would not experience for almost a century, settling in London, Nova Scotia, Ontario, and other British dominions. Seen from this perspective, did they really lose? This is not to suggest that the British were, as a rule, liberators of African slaves. They were not.
That line, our communication is undermined by severe disruptions. But I don't think we can't overcome this, because we are both determined to transform the spaces we are in. And the line between us, the line that disturbs us and underlines our existence in uncomfortable, unjustifiable ways. And though we call upon the spirits, we are still disturbed by it, that line. Our communication is still marked by those severe disruptions, reverberations of atrocities and destructions. Things which are not easy to talk about, history too painful or too shameful to mention, and a structure that regulates and reinforces this history, a framework full of obstacles and persecutions. So we need a lot of determination to find a way of avoiding this line for ourselves, only for ourselves, because almost all around us the line is living, still living dangerously, terribly, outrageously. This is frightening. The power of this line is so frightening, pathetically harmful. But I don't think we can't overcome this. I choose to be optimistic because we are both determined to transform the suffocating spaces that we are in. The way we have been separated by that line, that terrible, wretched color line. But to talk about this is the first resolution on the way to transformation.
Going back to the late 1960s, I quote again from Mumia Abu Jamal. I was all of 14 years old. A downtown bookstore, Robbins, squeezed between a restaurant and a discount clothing shop, became my mecca, for there every week, like clockwork, the so-called holy book would descend, like manna from a black revolutionary heaven, the latest issue of the Black Panther. I would buy a copy and then scrounge the shelf for books. Black books, radical books, all kind of books. The guy at the cash register would occasionally growl, or rather bellow, "This ain't a library, kid. You gonna buy something or what?" I usually ignored him and went back to my reading. Here I found the writings of Frantz Fanon, of Malcolm X, of Kwame Nkrumah, the poetry of Langston Hughes, the prose of Richard Wright, and the magnificent example of Paul Robeson. I also found several other young men, although most were older than I, who would be among the first to join the organization that had set my heart aflame. In many ways, it is fitting that the first quasi-office of the Black Panther Party in Philadelphia was neither a tenement apartment, nor a basement, nor a bar, but a bookstore, a realm for exchange of ideas. For there our heart and minds first met.